Afternoon. Welcome everyone to the latest version of the Election Security Exchange webinar. We actually have some exciting panelists here joining us. And the real theme of this topic today is incident response and what really happens when you have an incident. Because it's not if an incident happens, but when. So today we're going beyond the blueprint to talk about what happens when your plan meets reality that doesn't follow the script. All right, so we are joined by three other amazing panelists, which I'm going to let introduce themselves. First will be Marci. You want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Thank you, Spencer. I'm Marci Andino. I'm the Vice President of the Election Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, better known as the EI-ISAC.
Great. Thank you for being here, Marci.
My pleasure.
Mishak. Oh, you're on mute, Mishak. There you go.
Sorry. Thank you, Spencer. And my name is Mishak Walker, and I serve as the Election Security Coordinator for the offices of the Secretary of State in New Jersey. Thank you.
Outstanding. Again, thank you for being here. And KBB.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Brinson Bell, and I'm principal and co-founder of Advanced Elections, and we do work with the MIT Election Data and Science Lab, the Election Center's Coalition of Election Association Leaders, and also the Election Security Exchange. And my perspective today actually goes back to my experience, largely my experience as the state election director for North Carolina for the past 6 years. So thanks for having me, Spencer.
Oh, thank you for being here. All right, so in a past life, I did a lot of incident response work. I worked with a lot of public sector and private sector stakeholders in building out incident response plans, testing the incident response plans, and then sometimes we actually had to test those incident response plans in real life. And there's a phrase that you will see in the military that plans fail at first contact, and the enemy, or in our case, the adversary, also gets a vote. No pun intended there. But when an incident unfolds, there's always going to be something that comes up that is unexpected. You had this incredible, miraculous plan, and then something comes up and there's a problem. Adversaries, whether it's the weather, whether it's a cyber actor, whether it's a physical threat, they adapt in real time. They probe, they pivot, they escalate, and they try to exploit confusion. And also, almost every single time, early information is either incomplete, conflicting, or sometimes just plain wrong. So again, that's really that first hour really exposes gaps in authority, communications, and kind of some assumptions. So when I've seen some incident response plans fail is when they're very rigid, is when you have people flipping through their incident response plan and going to page 32 and going, wait a minute, this was supposed to happen before this. This is not exactly what happened. But and something I tell a lot of people as we're building out incident response plans, a big part of the incident response planning is building adaptive capacity. So building the capacity, building those relationships up front so that you know who you need to reach out to in event something is going wrong. Or, oh, I know this isn't part of our plan, but emergency manager, do you have a thing that you could actually do to help improve the situation or give us some additional capacity to move forward? And communication is resilience. At the end of the day, incident response planning, building those IR plans, ironically, is actually a communications exercise. So that you pre-establish a lot of those lines of communications. You communicate frequent and often during an incident. And then afterwards, you triage it and say, what do we do great? What could we do a little bit better? And what went horribly wrong? So with that, to bridge kind of the gap between the plan and the reality, We brought together some amazing experts in both cyber, physical, and operational security. So I want to actually turn it over to Marci with the EI-ISAC first. So we want to talk about the digital front. So when a cyber incident strikes, many feel that they're alone. One of the powers, the superpower of the EI-ISAC is the large community and the support that you provide to election officials. Marci, can you talk us through like some of the specific response capabilities that the EI-ISAC offers when election officials hit that big red button? And then what can they expect when the EI-ISAC comes to help? Marci, you're on mute as well.
It's those little things that get us every time. So sure, happy to talk about this. And before I get into what happens when an official actually hits that red button, let me talk about a user's typical reaction, because timing is very important during a crisis or during an incident. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that the initial reaction sometimes is confusion and disbelief. It's that, oh, this must be a glitch. Many assume it's a technical error and they just try logging out, logging back in, or rebooting the system. So we're losing critical time while all of this is happening. Once that realization sets in, then there's concern and anxiety. And this may happen because they could be locked out of their account. There could be a ransom note. There could be suspicious activity, or what they're looking for just isn't available. So once they figure out, okay, this seems to be real, then they start to worry about what might have been exposed, and they start fearing for personal or professional consequences that might take place. And are they going to get blamed? Is there going to be some type of disciplinary action? Excuse me. So while all of those things are going on, again, the clock is ticking. There's sometimes the user response is associated with avoidance or delay. And this is a very high risk type of response. All of the hesitation becomes because of that fearful, that fear that they have about reporting something, and that they hope that the issue resolves itself. And I used to have a boss that would say, hope is not a strategy, and that clearly is not a strategy here. And then sometimes while this is going on, they are also continuing to try to use the compromised system. So avoidance and delay, not a good plan. Self-troubleshooting is also not a good plan. It is very common in cyber or digital incidents, and it is also risky. And this is where the user tries to fix it themselves. They might also be clicking on additional links, rebooting the system, and all of this could unintentionally worsen the incident. They could be destroying evidence that analysts will need when they're doing their forensics. So the best type of response is a behavioral response, and that is immediate reporting. This is ideal, and this is where we need to get to, and that's why I wanted to go through this before I get into, what we can do. But this immediate response would be the user picks up the phone and immediately contacts IT or the security team. Maybe they even provide screenshots, they have details, and they stop using the affected system. So it's really important for all of us to create that environment where a user feels safe in reporting an incident without any type of fear. So, that is the challenge. Election officials need to immediately report to whoever's providing their network, whether it's their county IT, city IT, state, or somebody that they're contracting with. And then it is important to make sure that it is also reported to the EI-ISAC, because the more information that is reported to us, the quicker our analysts can identify trends and share that information with others. So now that the red button has been hit, hopefully they're picking up the phone and they're calling the Security Operations Center, or the SOC. And I'm not going to hit you with a lot of acronyms, but SOC is one of them, Security Operations Center. And the Security Operations Center is a managed security operations center, and it provides that safe and secure environment so that they can share critical data and request assistance regarding a potential cyber threat. And we have trained analysts that are on staff, and they are on call via telephone, via email, and that is 24/7, 365. So this is included in the cost of membership, and it's a very important part of membership. It's one of those that we hope you don't need, but it is there when you do. So there are different services that the SOC can offer, and the most common service is network and endpoint managing or monitoring capabilities. And this allows for near real-time detection and protection against the latest threats. It's what our analysts do 24/7. They can also help with triaging and remediation for removing malware and other cyber threats from a network, and early cyber threat warnings and advisories. And this just allows us to push out and warn other election officials, other users, of things that the analysts are seeing. And they can also assist with vulnerability identification and mitigation. So when do you contact the SOC? I think we've all decided you do it quickly, you do it as soon as you think something might be going on. But some common reasons to contact the SOC would include things like changes in hardware, software, firmware, all of this without the user's knowledge, instruction, consent, awareness. So if there's something happening on your desktop or your laptop, let's report it to the SOC. If there are compromised passwords, this is another important one to report to the SOC, because they're always looking for trends and patterns. And this could be something where they're targeting election officials. Malware, including viruses, Trojans, worms, and botnet activity, something else that can be reported to the SOC. If your website has been defaced, another thing to report to the SOC. Unauthorized access to information, disruption or attempted denial of service. And as we get closer to Election Day, we often see DDoS attacks on election infrastructure. Unauthorized use of system data or privileges. So again, the faster and the more you report to the SOC, the more our analysts have to work for, and it helps, or work with, and it helps them to identify trends so that we can push that information out to you. So when you actually call the SOC, our analysts are going to have to determine what type of assistance is needed. And based on questions or the level of assistance that's required, the analyst may directly support you, or they may have to call in other members of the team, such as the incident response team. But they're going to ask you a lot of questions because, they need to figure out what's going on. And it's that who, when, what, how, who's reporting, or who reported the problem. How did you find out about it? When did you know about it? And, what did you know? So there are a lot of questions, and they really do a lot of hand holding And they're helping you put together all the pieces to this puzzle so that they can figure out what you're dealing with and provide the proper level of assistance. So don't wait until you have all of the answers. Make that call. And these are people that are trained that can walk you through resolving whatever type of issue that you might have. So many times, if there is a cyber incident, the cyber incident response team will get involved. And they are available also around the clock, and they can hold emergency conference calls with you and your team to help assess what's going on and take the next steps. They can perform forensic analysis, and this is just the process of collecting, preserving, examining, and analyzing all of the digital evidence that is available. So, again, putting together those pieces of the puzzle. It's what they do. They'll do log analysis. They'll give some mitigation recommendations based on what they determine is going on. Excuse me. They may have to do some reverse engineering, but they can provide ongoing communications to you or with you throughout the incident. And in many cases, if you have a cyber insurance provider, they can collect some early data and share all of that with the cyber insurance provider. It's your data, not ours. So they would also be very happy to do that. They're also able to get on the ground and to start this process much quicker than a cyber insurance provider might. So it's important to make that phone call, even if we're just doing the initial intake and some preliminary work, and then handing it over to someone else. And this is also included in your cost of membership. So, Spencer, that's my overview of the SOC and incident response. So I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. And I'm going to drop it in the chat. There's a lot of amazing products that CIS and the EI-ISAC has available to both members and non-members. But one of them is the Essential Guide to Election Security, which is actually one of my personal favorite ones. So do you want to spend 30 seconds talking about the Essential Guide real quick, Marci?
Sure. So the Essential Guide to Election Security has been around since about 2018. Actually, the predecessor, the handbook, was around. And this guide is written for election officials. It's great if a technology provider wants to use it or somebody with technology skills, that's fine. But it's written with the election official in mind, and it covers a wide variety of topics that will increase your cyber posture. And it's a great resource. If you hear somebody talking about a topic and you don't know what they're talking about, it's a great place to go and get factual information.
Yeah, and one of my favorite parts about it is it's actually written for election officials. So it is actually in plain language that normalies can actually read and understand, which is amazing. So thank you very much, Marci.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna turn it over to Mishak. So Mishak was dealing with a few things last year in the physical security world. You know, cyber necessarily doesn't always happen in a vacuum. And sometimes that actually will intersect with the physical world, where maybe threats are made, which we then have in the cyber experience, which then turns into a physical real world incident or a physical real world consequences. So Misha, can you kind of talk about that for a little bit?
Thank you, Spencer. And this is honestly a great topic because last year in New Jersey, we experienced a volume of physical threats that pushed beyond what any plan can ever fully predict. But that's exactly the point, right? You cannot plan for every version of an incident, but what having a plan can do is make sure you're not building the plane while you're flying it. That said, I believe that moment taught us in real time that practice does not make perfect, but instead practice makes the response familiar when the moment is unfamiliar. And here's why. when you're facilitating these different trainings, such as tabletop exercises, COOP and contingency planning workshops, essentially everything that we do left the boom, meaning before an incident ever arises, it does two things. First, it gives you that knee-jerk reaction that you need when the pressure hits. But secondly, and more importantly, it also allows you to minimize the chaos and the unnecessary noise. And that's exactly what we saw happening during our most recent election period. And that was, there's a clear difference between knowing that we have a plan versus knowing we all know how to execute that plan. Because in the moment, especially when dealing with something as imminent as a bomb threat, time is of the essence. And a threat like that instantly forces decisions that can either stabilize the situation or create chaos in that moment. This all being said, what preparation gave us was not luck. It gave us the structure needed. And what that ultimately looked like in real time was being able to move with purpose instead of flipping through a binder or flipping through a book, because the decision points were already practiced. And truth be told, once you've rehearsed those pivots enough, the questions tend to get answered quickly. So in real time, instead of being confused or improvising, we're actually deciding to hold or evacuate, stay or relocate, and consistently leading with the mentality of protecting people first, then stabilizing operations second. And that's what made the difference in execution. We had clear continuity options that were in place. We had clear escalation paths and roles that were established. And this was all due to the proactive left the boom approach we've been applying as a state over the years. And essentially, all of this matters because when people hear physical incidents or physical threats, they tend to think it's only about safety at a specific location. But in reality, it's much bigger than that. And there's several other pieces to that puzzle. And if we're looking at the entire picture here, a physical incident nowadays can immediately involve many functions, such as your operations, your communications, and sometimes your cyber all at once. Because the moment a physical incident or threat hits, you're not just managing a site, you're managing people, you're managing rapid coordination, and you're managing time-sensitive communications. And all of this is happening in real time and under pressure. And these aspects or nuances are what no standard manual can replicate outside of its normal or predefined checklist. By all means, it cannot teach you how pressure compresses time or how it can cloud one's judgment and how it forces decisions, again, in real time. So to bring all of this together, what last year's incidents taught us was this: a physical threat essentially is not just how you respond, it's how quickly and effectively you can pivot without panic, without confusion, and without breaking operations. And once you realize that, you also realize how response is not just what you do, it's what you communicate while you're doing it. Because even while you're performing all of these efforts behind the scenes, you still have the responsibility of reassuring the public that these things are being handled, that operations will continue, and more importantly, voting will remain safe and accessible. And that matters immensely because if we're being honest, fear spreads faster than the truth. And this is where the partnerships comes into play, because when you anchor people to one clear message from trusted sources, you're able to prevent confusion from becoming its own incident. And that coordination, again, was built ahead of time before the moment ever arrived. So with all of this said, when you take a step back, that's what Left the Boom really produces. It doesn't just help you act, it helps you communicate with confidence while you act. And to add to this, here's what that preparation really brought us. We reduced hesitation because people knew who to call and what the next steps were. We reduced confusion because messaging and coordination was structured, not improvised. And lastly, we reduced downtime because continuity options were already identified. So therefore, the operational questions was not what do we do now? It was which options are we activating? So essentially, that's what good preparation buys you. Not perfection, but control in the parts you can control and the ability to respond effectively to what's outside of your control. So all in all, I'd say the biggest lesson or takeaway is to build a system that can absorb the pressure, because pressure does not create performance, it exposes preparation. And that is the point of the Left the Boom work. It's not just theory, it's the cornerstones. And that's the partnerships, the planning, the training, and the clear communication done early and reinforced often. Not once, but often, ultimately making the right of boom survivable. Thank you. And I hope that answers that for you, Spencer.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you very much. So while I drop in one of our products, which is security, physical security, first things first, in the chat, I'm sure when you were planning for, going through doing the rehearsing that you mentioned, you probably had a lot of people saying, oh, this will never happen to us. This will never happen. It only happens to other people. Can you kind of explain how that process and how you were able to convert the it never will happen to us to we now have a great template that you can actually execute on?
Yeah, so no one's ever expecting anything to happen. But again, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But again, this is why those left to boom efforts are so, they're important. They're so important because when you take the time out to come together as a state, right, and really sit down at the table and work through these different workshops, whether that's building out coops for each county or after building those coops for each county, then coming together and practicing through tabletop exercises, that really helps in the long run. So again, when these things happen in real time, you're not just trying to improvise. You already have a plan in place and you know who to contact, you know when to escalate, and you know how to pick things up where you left off. So I would say it really comes down to taking the time out to plan and then also practice that plan.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And if anyone who is listening to the webinar hasn't read our First Things First product, we would definitely encourage it. And all of the communications coming out of the Election Security Exchange is written again, much like the Election Security Guide, where it is plain English, written directly for election officials. And in the Physical Security First Things First, we give 5 simple, easy to do steps that election officials can use to improve their physical security. With that being said, we're going to transition over to Karen Brinson Bell. I think you pretty much faced the ultimate stress test, Karen, during the 2024 election when Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina. Can you talk to us about the moment that your practice turned into that devastating reality?
Absolutely. And I hope that my connectivity holds. I'm getting some unstable messages. So Spencer, flag for me if I need to do something else. But the reality did hit us. On September the 28th, 2024, Hurricane Helene struck Western North Carolina. We have 100 counties in North Carolina, and 25 of them were declared federal disaster areas because of the devastation of Hurricane Helene. North Carolina, as most realize, is considered a swing state, battleground state, purple state, whatever adjective you have to give it. And with that knowledge, we were already sort of on guard for how to be responsive to the added national attention that comes from being a swing state, and the physical risks, the cybersecurity risks, and then I'd also say that we were well prepared, like so many, because of having gone through the pandemic. And I share that because most people don't think of a pandemic and a hurricane response as being the same. But when you take an all hazards approach, like we had learned from our partners with emergency management, that prepares you for whatever circumstances are thrown your way, including, significant devastation. So I'll set the stage for a moment about Hurricane Helene. That date in September was 39 days out from Election Day. The absentee by mail ballots were already in the mail stream, literally and figuratively. They had gone out that week or within that week. And then we were 19 days out from in-person early voting, which is the most popular voting method in North Carolina. Typically, counties will see 65% of their ballots cast during early voting. So in many ways, I don't want to lessen our runway we had to get to election day, but our runway was shorter than what most realized because we had to get to that early voting day and be prepared to deliver voting. While, Western North Carolina looked like an apocalypse had hit it. There was no self-service, gas. But I mean, it got to where there was no gas. Areas of Asheville, North Carolina, which most people are familiar with, went 50 some days without water supply, like actual drinkable water. Many went without, you know, portable or water, potable water, toilets. I mean, these are simple things that we take for granted that were not available to anyone. Forget, just the government infrastructure, the entire communities. So many lost their homes, watched everything be washed away. And yet, we had to deliver voting. And so to just put it in context of what our preparation looked like, that left of boom that Mishak was talking about, we had exercised for years with state emergency management, with state IT services, with the local government IT organization called North Carolina Local Government Information Systems Association, more easily known as NICL-GISA. I always love to throw that in there, but also our federal partners, our North Carolina National Guard and their cybersecurity unit. We met monthly. We included our vendors in our exercises. We had a hub working group between state emergency management officials and county and state staff, so that we were, working that the information pieces, the training pieces throughout the year. And to tell, that really gave us a good muscle memory. We had learned each other's languages. We knew each other's key dates. No longer did these partners think that elections happened 2 days out of the year. They knew that voting was going on. And I knew that when my phone rang on the Saturday morning, the day after Hurricane Helene hit, and it was the state emergency management director calling me to say, I know voting's happening. And I want you to know that you are prioritized alongside all the other critical infrastructure. We have to be in recovery and response mode, but you're in our future state and we will see you through. And we're going to start meeting daily until we have that roadmap mapped out for you. And that's when I knew that all that partnership, all that preparation had paid off. It meant that they understood that we were going to need tents, portable toilets. We were going to need curfew letters to allow our field staff to be out in the region, even past curfew. They helped us to get fuel for our state cars out in that area, whatever we needed. And that was their response. You tell us what we need and we will get it in here. And the same was true with FEMA and our federal partners. FEMA was at the table. There was a lot of misinformation that went around about that, but FEMA was at the table, and FEMA made 7 tents possible to be voting sites when the structures were gone otherwise. And they provided the security to those spaces and made sure that they were on site in time for voting. Emergency management also coordinated with all of our utility companies. And when we opened statewide, all 100 counties on early voting day, including those 25 federal disaster counties, we had power at all 76 of the planned 80 early voting sites in Western North Carolina. And that is just a true testament to what building these relationships, meeting routinely, exercising together, and planning for all hazards really is just such a testament when you see all of that come together. And a couple of other things that I'll just note, the reality means that it's not necessarily pretty. it's not necessarily going to go as planned. I will tell you that it has never been lost on me that the disaster recovery plan that we had to develop for our state IT, if you had printed it, it would be over 1,800 pages. That's not reality. Now, that's a good disaster recovery, but you got to have the the thing you can put under your arm and go out the door when the fire alarm sounds. And so to that, I just always encourage folks, work the incident response plans and the continuity of operation plans and the crisis communication plans, because they help you identify the gaps, and they need to be reviewed routinely so that they are ready when that moment strikes. And it will strike. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter now of when and how. Hurricanes don't hit Western North Carolina. That's the eastern part of our state. So I point that out, and I'm going to show what I call the Skittles document. But the other is some additional contingency planning that we did through our ARCs, attack response kits. So I take you back to 2020, pre-pandemic. It's hard to think about 2020 having a pre-pandemic time period, but one of our county governments had a cybersecurity attack, and they had to take everything offline, phones, internet, computers, and we had no idea what degree of infection things had. So we had to stand up that county to get absentee ballots in the mail, printed, all of that, requests coming in, all of that. And so we just, took what we had in the state office and we set them up. And that was the impetus for the idea of an attack response kit, a mobile office in a box. Can't stand up all the voting sites, but we can keep the county office operational, the county elections office operational, with Cradle Point, with clean laptops, cell phones, things of that nature. Well, those came in handy for Helene, even though they had been designed around a cyber attack. They came in handy for a natural disaster as well. And we've since added satellite service to those kits so that they can be operational. And, those are the kind of lessons learned as well that I encourage people. It's about building, responding, and evaluating to be ready, left of boom, right of boom, and to be thoroughly prepared. And meet with those partners now. That's one of the things we've stressed in the Election Security Exchange newsletters and some of the documents already is don't wait for the perfect. I've got all the partners. Get all the partners you can together, state level, local level, and start meeting and making sure that you get that muscle memory and start learning each other's language. And when the disaster does hit, then pull together everyone and create something that's as ugly as this Skittles document, as I call it. We started having our assessment meetings the very first business day we were together. And I'll just point out, as luck would have it, we also had a major pipe burst in the state elections office over that weekend, unrelated to Helene, but when it rains, it pours, literally. But we started out thinking, okay, we're going to meet. We met each of these days, and we wanted a running document of what was happening. We realized, first thing, what was the status of our counties? Was our personnel there safe? That was priority one. Forget the building, forget the equipment. I mean, we did focus in on that, but we wanted to know they were safe. So if you can see any of this, you don't have to read it, but you can see that, we're in communication with Mitchell director and chair, just to make sure that they were okay. And then, if I scroll across, you can just see that this document continues. The colors are for each day that we were meeting, and some reason I cannot seem to get this to scroll. There we go. And we marked it by done. We gave updates in the different colors so that we just had a continuous record of what we needed to accomplish. It was a shared document, so everyone had access to it, and we could add to the notes. It's not pretty, but it worked. It did the job. And so that's what I want to make sure I stress to everyone in this moment. And then never forget that it's your partners that'll see you through. Like I said, I never talked to a single utility company, but we had power. So North Carolina National Guard had generally helped us with cyber issues, but it was National Guardsmen who were taking election officials by ATV across the river to the isolated communities to make sure that we could set up voting in those isolated spots. And it was just because, that county didn't have enough resources without the National Guard. And they said, yeah, we know elections, we'll help. So, that's what reality looks like. It wasn't exactly as we planned it out on paper, but it worked.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Karen.
Oh,
So,
and you're going to put in the chat the numbered memo because we also had to have some emergency authorization. And so there's a numbered memo that gave guidance out to the counties. And it's also the resolutions that the state board had to pass to pivot so that we could, vote out of precincts, so that we could offer the ability for voters to take their ballots to another county. Or have a family member take it to another county or the state board office, things like that. And so having that emergency authorization and mapping out how to get through a crisis is something you have to think about in advance so that you can pivot quickly and get that resolution in front of the authority who has those emergency powers. So hopefully this is a helpful, it's a lengthy document, but if you're an elections wonk, you'll love it.
perfect. Thank you. So Marcy mentioned, and I loved how she said that hope is not a strategy. Mishak said pretty much the same thing. Don't count on luck, is I believe what she used. And we have a resource called It Starts with the Team, Building Your Election Security Work Group. And can you kind of talk about the importance of that, Karen, on like how that pre-planning on building that election security work group is really critical in establishing that communication early and often?
Yeah, I alluded to this, and I'm happy to talk about this more because, as you could, here's the reality: election officials have to wear a lot of hats. And while we can be skilled in voter registration, we can be skilled in logic and accuracy testing, and so forth, we aren't necessarily skilled or equipped or funded for major logistics operations. I don't have access to portable toilets, for example. And while there are many large offices that may have internal IT, most of our jurisdictions are going to rely on county IT services. And so making sure that we have those established liaisons, the cell phone number that works, and the that muscle memory that I was talking about becomes really critical. And so what we have outlined about having a working group is both for state and local officials to make sure that you're talking with your emergency management, your IT services. We learned about fire departments and the critical role they have in actually doing wellness checks during a disaster. If your county manager or budget officer, for example, so that you can make sure that they understand what your budgetary needs may be when you're in these moments of an election, and how to see that through. And so identify law enforcement. I shouldn't ever forget them and the importance that they have. And then, like I mentioned, being in communication with the vendors. Don't just lean on the vendors when you got to get that print order in or that piece of voting equipment. Because we had quarterly meetings with vendors, they were in communication with me early on. We were lucky enough that no equipment or ballots were damaged and no lives lost. But that meant the vendors said, okay, we don't have to go into crisis mode either. How can we help? And they provided meals to our workers because there was no electricity for them to make those wonderful things in the ovens or the crock pots to take into the voting sites. And so what we're emphasizing is form that working group, have the meeting, have a pretty regular cadence. I'm a big fan of saying monthly. do exercises together and exercise the communication plan, exercise identifying the skill sets and the authority so that if it's a bomb threat, you're as prepared as if it's a goat that eats your telephone line. And yes, I've been through that too. So, yeah, all of this is applicable.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So one of the things that we do here with the Election Security Exchange is we try to package things into bite-sized pieces of information, snack-sized pieces of information, and a full-blown meal, which now I'm hungry as I'm talking about that. But kind of pivoting to a bite-sized thing, rapid-fire succession, what is one thing that an election official could do that is tiny, low cost, but also something that could dramatically improve their security posture? So Marci, we'll start with you.
Become very familiar with the essential guide to election security.
Amazing, thank you. And Mishak?
I'm going to follow the theme here, and that's really putting together a contingency plan and getting your team in one room with some coffee and donuts, because no one wants to talk about worst case scenarios on an empty stomach. But all jokes aside, coming together and putting that plan in action.
And how about yourself, Karen?
We've talked a lot about the partnership meetings and forming that working group. So I don't want to use that. That would be my one, but yeah, I've used that one. So I'll add in another little aspect. Think about being on site with your at your emergency operations center so that you're there with those partners. That's not a big ask. It's there already. Or talk with your officials about how to set up a web EOC so that you have that established, immediate communication. You're tracking incidents together, and they have those tools in place already. They just have to adapt them for elections.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I want to thank our panelists for taking the time today. Marci, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate you and everything that the EI-ISAC does for the election community. Mishak, thank you for the amazing presentation as well. I definitely appreciate you, and fantastic job as always. And Karen, appreciate you every single day. So thank you very much. On that note, this is the end of our webinar. Again, our goal is to provide tools for election officials. And please head over to securingelections.org to explore our resource library, along with some of the guides that we posted today. So thank you very much, and everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.